I made you a host.
Okay,
Perfect.
we should be recording now.
Yay.
Okay, well, good. Well, we're here for our July uh caregiver talk and tools is what we're calling it. And so today's topic is anxiety management tools. And before we get into actually the tools, I thought it would be nice to connect just on the topic itself as we experience anxiety as caregivers, as moms. And actually, even before that, I'll do a very quick introduction of who I am for anyone listening on the recording. And typically, I will share that I'm a mom of four, and one of my children is a multiple brain tumor survivor. So he has been my invitation into the life of caregiving. And I've gotten to work with the acute syndrome community on a number of occasions, and I love this community deeply. Let's see. I live in San Diego, California, and my training is in coaching, life coaching specifically. So as I come to these topics, I'm coming at them from the perspective of a professional coach, not as a therapist. And especially, I want to mention that on this topic that anxiety is a very big, it's almost like the term autism these days, where it can mean so many different things. And so that's why I want to kind of even talk about like, what are we talking about when we talk about anxiety and how, like, what opportunities do we have to support ourselves when we experience anxiety? And also to be, clear about where my, um, uh, in some cases, I think what would be beneficial is to talk to a medical professional about anxiety, because I'm going to have a very different perspective and expertise on anxiety than they would. And I think both are very, very important. So I will be staying in my lane. But also, I think as we start to talk about anxiety, let's even just open the conversation about like, well, what's the definition? Like, I looked it up. What's the definition of anxiety? And it is, I'll read it. A feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. It's a big, I mean, it's a big definition, right? It's very broad. And I've also heard anxiety described as fear of the future or like fear as it relates to future. I can't remember what the term is for past. I feel like there was a very specific term for the past. Does anyone know that term? I can't remember it. So let's just start with a kind of open conversation. Participate if you want to. Also, welcome to listen if that is more comfortable to you. But um, how do you typically experience anxiety in terms of your body and your mind? And I'm glad to share as well, but I'll see if anyone wants to share before I do.
Okay, sure. Um, I typically feel it in my chest. Like I can always be like, ooh, something's brewing because I have this just like nervous anxiousness flutter feeling
Yeah.
in my chest. If it's really bad, I'll start getting chills.
Ooh,
So like
interesting.
regardless of how many layers of clothes I'm wearing, blankets, whatever, I will be very cold and actually sometimes even shake with chills.
Really interesting.
That's like severe, like really bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shelley?
Uh, mm, Stomach pain, nausea is my first and most common. Um, Sometimes just heart palpitations. Um, and I know when something's bothering me that I'm not thinking about, when my jaw is really painful, and I've
Hmm.
been clenching it for probably a week, especially during my sleep. So I do wear mouth guard. But when I drive, I wish I had a mouth guard for my car that I could just pop in because that tends to be a time that I clench. So yeah.
You know what? I don't know if it's actually helpful to me or not, but very similar. I find that I have a lot of tension in that like mouth area. I will chew gum
Yeah.
so that at least I'm not just like, that at least it's like there's some movement. And again, I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if it's actually
definitely,
helpful or not,
no, no, no,
but
I
it's what I do.
definitely, that is my, I have to do that. That helps a lot,
Yeah.
the chewing gum.
Yeah.
Chewing
And
gum,
then,
and then the other thing is ice water to kind of shock your body, like drinking, not
drinking it.
plunging. I
Yeah.
would plunge if I could, but just a glass of ice water to kind of shake your body into, ooh, it's cold, and forget
Hmm.
about some of the other symptoms.
Well, I personally experienced something very similar to what you guys have shared so far. A lot of tightness in my chest. Like, so actually, if I'm feeling really anxious, I actually will have the experience of not being able to take a full breath, which then also spins into like more, I guess I would say, perseveration about that, more focus on that, and more tightness on that. So, um, and our breath, as you know, we'll talk about a little bit later, is actually one of the only conscious ways that we can interact with our subconscious. Because a lot of this stuff that we're experiencing anxiety from is going to be more subconscious than it is even conscious. That yes, we can certainly tap into that, but especially given the load that we carry as caregiving people, that um, there's so much running in the background that we have on our radars, but again, we're not consciously thinking about. And I think that's the thing about anxiety that I personally, I'm not often, I wouldn't even describe myself as a worrier. I would say that the word and the definition that stands out to me is the uncertain outcome. But there's just so much uncertainty on how things will go, and even just the nature of not knowing or having a clear vision of what's going to happen is that's an unwelcome thing for our little human bodies. We're like, no, no, no. We like to predict. We like to have certainty. That is how we feel safe. And then I think the other thing I would add that probably will be similar for many of you is that I often will then have a really hard time focusing when I feel anxious. And what we would, if you were witnessing me when I'm feeling really anxious, is a lot of perhaps, well, the absence of stillness and a lot of doing. Like I have to get up and do. Feel there's this urge to get up and do to try to like, it's almost like try to generate the certainty through what I'm doing, um, that may or may not be successful. And, you know, I have a take on this that in some, for me, sometimes I totally empower that energy because I actually like the outcome. I was like, I actually like having the experience of having a very organized house and allowing that part of my body that just feels like it needs to create something certain, whether or not it's going to get what it actually is. It's not going to get all the way there. I know that. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's right or wrong. So sometimes we empower that and sometimes we don't. So what we're going to be talking more about today is essentially tools that we can use to support ourselves when we notice that we're feeling anxious or not calm and we don't want to be feeling that way. And I think a thing here to really emphasize is that um, these tools are designed not to change our circumstances, because I think the reasons that we feel anxious are not necessarily going to change. We can't necessarily get rid of a lot of them in our lives, but we don't necessarily have to have the same relationship to them. That we can very much change how we think about the situations in our life. So, bear with me for a second as I figure out how to share the screen, the particular screen that I want to share. And I have a worksheet. It's not a worksheet. What would we call this? We would call it a handout, a worksheet, an exercise sheet. I don't know what it's called.
A
But you
one
should.
pager.
Thank you. It's a
There we
PDF.
go.
It's a
Yeah.
printable guide. It's a printable guide. Okay, so I'll share portions of it at a time. So first off, can everyone see the two cute little boxes on your screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So we're gonna go over, I was gonna say six. We may not have time for all six, but we're gonna go over as many as we have time for. But you will have this handout resource to be able to take with you. And I will also follow up with some links to some specific things because this is designed to be printed and then there's a little QR code that takes us to a link. I can shortcut that by giving you some links to some resources that are available. So we're going to go over this. And I think one of the things that you're going to notice in terms of commonalities between a lot of these is we will not solve our anxiety by thinking our way out of it. I've tried. It doesn't work. I've tried real hard. And I probably still try. But I think a lot of this is actually tending to the body that we have. Is the body is what actually holds our emotions and actually is where we have feelings. And so it's kind of where we need to meet ourselves. Again, not where we're going to, our brain is not necessarily where we're going to solve this. So, although now that I'm going to say that, we're going to do one that does actually kind of help us meet our brains where we're at. So the first one is going to be what I call thought download. So it's actually a pretty simple exercise, but designed to give you a pause and to help observe what you're thinking about. Because oftentimes what we'll find is, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of things that are kind of running around up there that are less conscious than we realize. And when we take a minute to do this exercise, we bring that kind of subconscious into the consciousness, which is where we can then change our relationship to it, or even just like notice it. And sometimes even just noticing that we've been thinking something is enough to kind of dispel the power it has over us. I always think of an example. I used to do this regularly. I used to do this exercise almost every day, and I don't find that I need to do that anymore. But it's really, really helpful. And what I would find is that when I would do the thought download every day in the morning, I would wake up, no matter what time it was, and the thoughts that were running through my head was I was behind. And I started to be like, wait, that's weird. I feel behind whether or not it's 10 o'clock on Saturday or whether it's 5:30 on Tuesday. That's weird. So it's almost like my brain was just throwing out this idea, you're behind, no matter what. It was like the thing that it knew to like get me going and to, I don't know why. And so when I was able just to notice that, I was able to kind of almost be like, oh, okay, brain, you're telling me this thing and you kind of love you, but you actually kind of make mistakes sometimes. So you don't necessarily, I don't need your help with that anymore. Thank you. But I'm not behind. There's no such thing as behind. It's made up anyhow. Okay, so let's go over the exercise in specific. So, thought download. So, this is going to help identify specific anxious thoughts. And that can be really helpful because, again, we don't necessarily see this before we stop and do it. So, and I have easiest way to do it is on just a simple piece of paper. You don't have to have anything complicated or a journal. I like to set a timer for 5 minutes, or I like to have people start by doing this, set a timer for 5 minutes and literally just write down everything on your mind, everything you're thinking, maybe all the things you feel like you need to do. Maybe just let your mind kind of go wild for 5 minutes and write it all down. So you don't have to use good grammar, punctuation, spelling. Nobody's going to see this but you. And then you have a second to, once the 5 minutes is through, to notice what thoughts are on that paper that are creating the feeling of anxiousness and be able to kind of question some of them. Like the example I said earlier from, I noticed this thought kept popping up, I'm so behind. I was able to actually ask myself, is that really true? And then the answer was no. And so it's almost like eventually, after working with myself for a while, that thought stopped coming because it was like, okay, I guess you're right. Like there's no such thing as behind. So again, this exercise is designed to help us work with those thoughts a little bit. Before I go on this particular exercise, any questions? Or it's pretty straightforward. I know some of you have heard this over and over again. They're like, okay, fine. Okay, let's do the breathwork exercise. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we have a nervous system. I know that doesn't sound like rocket science. We have a nervous system, and this nervous system is designed very specifically to keep us alive. Interestingly enough, it's actually not very interested if we feel happy or if we feel calm or if we feel like any sort of things that we want to feel. All it really cares about is alive. So it doesn't necessarily go back to a really calm state without some support. And what we do know is the life that we are living is very, very stressful. And so breath work is a way of, it's almost like you have to use your mind to think, okay, I'm going to do this exercise, but this is a body experience and not a brain-based experience. And so there's a million different breaths, and this particular one is just a simple one. And it's designed to activate the parasympathetic part of your nervous system, which is telling your body, I don't need to run anymore. I'm okay. And even if it's just for like these 8 seconds at a time, that 8 seconds actually has a profound effect on our overall well-being. I was actually talking to a functional medicine doctor for the podcast a couple years ago now, but he was like, even just for a caregiver to give ourselves the experience of being in the body in a restful state for like 3 breaths a day has a huge impact. So this one I love because it literally can be done in 3 breaths, and then that's enough to matter. Okay. So we'll come back and we'll do some of these if we have time, but I'm going to keep going so that we can get through some more of them. And I didn't read through this necessarily. It's pretty straightforward. So basically, it would be a 4-second inhale, holding your breath, and then the exhale. And very specifically, the exhale is longer than the inhale for the reason that there's a switch off between our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system. And when we're exhaling, is when we're telling ourselves everything's okay. If you think about like when you're running, you're going, you're taking a lot of breath in. It's your body's saying we got to mobilize and we got to go. So when you're exhaling, it's actually when your body's like, okay, I can rest now. All right. We'll just leave the screen like that. Okay. I'll move it to the top. Okay. So this is I'll go over this one quite quickly, but this is a resource for a guided meditation. This is going to be where you have, so this particular meditation I have as a resource is 11 minutes, but it's designed to um, help to use that brilliant mind of your own, of yourself, to go to a place where you actually can find some emotional safety, and also really reconnect with yourself, but get really grounded. So this, it's like it's like, isn't it incredible that you can go to an entirely different world in your mind in 11 minutes? And so this would be a great resource to use if you have a few minutes to yourself where you know that you won't be interrupted, but also to use when you're not feeling grounded, when you feel like you actually, I don't know if y'all have the experience of oftentimes if I'm not feeling grounded, I'll literally feel like someone's like shaking my head back and forth. And it actually is really interesting or I think it's interesting. Early days when my son was first diagnosed, I did a lot of doctor's appointments, and I always had this feeling when I was in the lights at the doctor's office. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought, well, maybe something's wrong with my blood. I don't know what. I thought it was a lot of different things. But eventually I learned the language for that was that where it was I was not grounded, that my all of my energy was up really really high and in a way that made me feel off balance and unstable, and I particularly don't like that feeling. So this is designed to help us root back into not just who we are, but also if for people that this is fitting, bring a spiritual component to it, connect to a higher being in a way that's empowering for you. Did you want to say something, Casey?
Yeah, I was just going to mention here, and you might talk about it later, but I find that this is helpful. This and tapping and sometimes even the breathing, but I've experienced feeling almost disassociated from my body. So you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about like the energy up here, but sometimes I feel like it's happening to someone else. Like this, you know what I mean? Like you're walking around and you're doing the motions and you're going through the processes, but you almost feel numb, like you're just
Mm-hmm.
completely not in your own body. And having these grounding exercises has been really helpful whenever I'm in that state.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a very real experience, like for this life. And I think the word that pops up into my head when you say that, Casey, is trauma, right? Like, so again, our bodies are so brilliant. They're designed so amazingly. And when we are being confronted with something that is beyond our ability to cope with it, our bodies have this brilliant ways. So like this disassociation is a brilliant way of separating in the moment out from what is actually happening so that you can cope in the moment. And so, we want to, or I like to appreciate the gifts of our body and the ways that we are created in the moment. And also, when we have that capacity, is to go back and tend to those parts of us. So, yes, very much by like tapping is a phenomenal tool for, we're going to go over that in just a second, for both anxiety and trauma, because in therapy, of course, without saying, but therapy is not accessible to all of us all the time. And so I love this because it gives us the ability to still tend to ourselves in ways that we truly need, but then yeah, accessible. Um, okay, let's do pardon me, tapping meditation. So I know Casey and Shelley have heard of this now. Brandy, have you ever heard of anything called EFT tapping? Not so much. Well, good. I'd love to introduce you to it. So it's called Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's essentially it's kind of a combination of what I would say acupuncture or pressure and meditation and therapy. And it's proven. They've done a lot of studies. It's very proven to be effective. And that's one thing I love is that they actually have clinical trials on it. And particularly, they did a lot of trials on Vietnam vets that were like treatment resistant to a lot of other support, but this has been very effective for them. So, what it is again, it's a combination. So, it's best to experience it, but I don't know that we'll have time to do all of them. So, basically, it's a combination of tapping on different points during and saying a meditation during it. And personally, you very much can do self-guided tapping. My personal preference is to have a meditation guide or like a guide to do it. And I have two resources for that. So I have one resource that's free. Insight Timer app is a free app, and so there are quite literally thousands of tapping meditations to do. You just have to put in EFT tapping, and you can go from 1 minute to 20 minutes. There's all of them in between. Sometimes, especially us anxious minds, have a hard time with decisions in the moment. And so, for that reason, there's also, I'm looking at my label on this actually, and I'm like, that's a wrong label. There's a resource to the tapping meditation. There's the tapping solution. I was like, I have the name wrong. The tapping solution, which is a paid app, and I think it's $11.99 a month or $100 for the year. But it's where it actually has like you could say, I want to do the anxiety tap program, and it's a little bit more guided. And personally, I think very worth the $11.99 a month. It also will teach you a little bit more about the tool of tapping, and it's a resource that I use just I would say semi regularly. Sometimes I'll go in spells of tapping every day for a couple weeks, and sometimes I will go a couple weeks without tapping at all. But I love having it as a resource for like, so Casey, you talked about this feeling of like walking around and you know that you're dissociated. I love having tools that I know that I can use to tend to myself. Do I always feel amazing after I use my tools? No. Sometimes I still feel terrible. But I think that's where, I always like to get the words in experiment. Shelley heard this yesterday. Experiment and practice. That sometimes, we're going to try something and it's not going to work. And that's why I've given these 6 options, is because some of you will be like, oh my gosh, this thing was life changing. And some of you will be like, nah, I didn't notice any difference. And so that's why I think it's a very personal, like what works for you is what works for you. What works for me is what works for me. And so really experimenting to see what works for you. The other thing I'll mention before I go on to explaining more of the options is it's almost like, you guys know those, like, I think it's a Japanese type fountain where like, it's like a pipe and it's like this and like water drops into it, like just one drop at a time. And then eventually enough and then like tips out. and then it goes back. I should have a picture of that. You guys know that kind of fountain? It's almost like that too, where I think a lot of these, like if you do it one time, you may or may not notice an effect. But I think by practicing it over and over again, I think your body also recognizes, oh, okay, this is the time where I get to calm down. Like you actually, I think, even get better at the tools. Um, so next one, we'll go on the next one. So nature therapy. So I mean, the description I have is a very specific one, but I think less specifically, I think getting out in nature in any capacity. So whether that's literally looking out your your room, or it's like hospital room, or even actually what is proven to be effective is looking at a picture of nature on your phone. Not as good as the real thing, but why I say that example is that we can always find little ways to support ourselves wherever we're at. And so that looking at nature, being in nature, but also the movement of walking is actually very soothing for our nervous system. And so that kind of done in any combination can be very supportive for anxiety. So, and we can walk, be in nature, and breathe at the same time. So that's a 3 for 1. Okay, and then the last one, I think I still have plenty of time to explain it. Um, is I love the rhyme. I just love rhymes. The anti-anxiety day, the anti-anxiety way to start your day. And this is where we're going to do a little bit more mind management, less the body, but this is like setting ourselves up, meeting ourselves where we know that we're at. And um, so I'll simply go over the exercise. I do also have a handout for this in terms of like a template that you can use as a calendar tool. But I find that, yeah, this takes a little bit of practice, but it can be really effective. So yeah, we're holding a lot of hats as potentially working moms, caregiving moms, wives in a lot of cases. Like there's a lot of, parent or mothers to other siblings and all that. We have a lot on our plate. And so we have a lot in our minds. And that all spins around up there and it just keeps going and going and gets out of control. And a lot of us um, like to think that we can do it all. And then we'll ask ourselves to do it all. And then we'll feel anxious all day long and we'll go to bed feeling like we totally failed. And that's not cool. Like you never do that to anybody else. Like if you think about being somebody's boss and like demanding that they do this list of 100 things today or else, like that would not be very nice. So we're going to show up for ourselves in a way that is just really like generous and kind. So the exercise or the practice really, it's not the kind of thing that it would be done like once, it would be done daily, is to write down everything on your to-do list, daily or weekly. Write down everything on your to-do list. And I'm thinking here, I have this right here. This is what I did 2 days ago. Because actually, even in the moment, if I notice myself feel anxious, I stop, drop, and do a download to reorient my mind to what has to be done, and what has to be done now versus what can wait. So I don't have to hold it in my mind. So write down everything on your to-do list. And if just starting this practice, that might be kind of a long list, but the idea is to get it all out of your mind and out on the paper. And next thing would be I have the list here. It doesn't have to be done exactly in the same order, but basically the idea is deciding how long things will take. So some cases, let's say it's call Dr. So-and-so and make an appointment. Okay, well, I find that takes about a half an hour a lot of times, like to make one simple call. It's not a 5-minute job. And so really giving myself 30 minutes to do that task, that would be kind of what I do with that. Other things like, let's say it's a work project where it's a little more ambiguous. What can be really helpful is deciding ahead of time how long it's going to take you. I'm trying to teach this to my teenager, and he's not really taking it up. I'm like, just get it done. Just decide you're going to get it done and get it done. And so this is where a lot of times we're going to guess, but also it's kind of the concept of, when you go take a test, like an SAT test. They tell you, all right, you got 4 hours. You got to get the test done. And most people get the test done. And so this is the kind of the same concept that we can bring to a lot of areas of our life where whether it's cleaning out our closet or something, professional or more caregiving role, um, we can kind of constrain ourselves and then actually like challenge ourselves to get it done. Um, the other step here is to prioritize the most important and urgent items. So in a lot of cases, I'll see something on my list and I'll recognize I don't have, that's not a today thing. I actually don't have time to do it today. So I'm going to look ahead in my calendar and decide exactly when I have time to do it so that I know that it's settled, that I can have the confidence it's taken care of, but I'm also not holding it over my head all day today. Um, Another thing also we can decide to do is just completely cancel things out. Like maybe I have this idea that I want to do some weeding in the backyard and I'm like, I'm just going to not do that. Like I'm just going to decide I'm not going to do that and that's off my list. And so then I don't have to hold it anymore. And so then the last thing would be to actually calendar everything on the list. So put it in your calendar as you'll actually be able to do it. So if we leave things yep, good job, Casey. Yeah, like if we leave things in concept form, then we look back, we can also see there was no way I was ever going to be able to do that. And so this is essentially a practice of stop asking ourselves to do things we can't do. So that's why it's kind of this yes, it's a mind exercise, but also it's like a relationship exercise because it's the relationship we have with ourselves. So, um, I have this just a printable one sheet, little piece of paper, obviously, people, but it has a half an hour by half an hour schedule, which is how I schedule my day by 30-minute increments. And um, oh, I know. Hold on, I have somebody coming into my office. Oh, thank you. Um, the joys of working at home in the summertime.
In the summer. Yep.
In the summertime. But don't worry, we have gotten back something that was stolen yesterday by my son. Okay, focus. Okay, so the example here. So this anti-anxiety way to start your day, especially in the summer, I find that I have to use this over and over again because here's the thing that we forget to put on our schedules. Go have fun. Go relax, put your feet up, watch TV, shower, the things that actually are restorative to us, we forget to like actually put space in. And some of us have minds, we're working with our minds, but some of us have minds that's like work all the time, work, 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 very demanding. And and so when our minds are like that, it becomes actually very hard to enjoy anything else but work or to be able to have peace or rest when you're doing anything else. And so by actually planning your day in a way, like fully planning, like I want to say every minute of your day, but having planned in rest, restoration, even just the simple things like making your bed. Um, when you're in the moments where you're like kind of assigned to be having fun and your brain pops something up like, oh, you should be doing something else or you didn't get all your work done or whatever the thing is, you can then kind of push back a little bit and say, actually I do have this. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now. This is what I assigned myself, and I figured out how to make it all work. So it's almost like you can guide yourself back on track. And I find that I have to do this over and over again. My mind just is pretty, you know, persistent in this area, and yet it's so helpful because then, well, I'll be practicing this a lot next week. I'm going to be taking a lot more time off next week. Why? Because all of my kids are home. And so rather than pushing and grinding and trying to get work done, I'm saying no. The choice I'm making ahead of time because it works is going to be taking time off. And my brain is going to need a lot of reminders that it's okay, everything's handled. I don't have to worry about that. Okay. We have a few minutes for questions, comments, feedback, anything. What do you got?
I had an idea, Kara. I wondered if each one of us wanted to like pick one of these and say even out loud, like this next week or, whatever, this is something that I'm going to try. I feel like sometimes we walk away and we're like, oh, yeah, that looks great, but we don't actually implement it. So I wondered
Hmm.
if we each wanted to kind of pick something and be like, yep, I'm going to do this, and give
Love
it a
that
time,
idea.
the next week or two.
Huh? Yeah, and I love that, yeah, extra step that you just said of actually give it a time. So
Hmm.
so let's all take a minute to you don't have to. We won't force you. But if you're game, to decide which one you want to do, but also decide actually when you're going to do it. That last piece I think is critical because a lot of times we'll want to do something. We're like, that's a great idea. But then when someone says, okay, when are you going to do it? Then all of a sudden it gets real. And so I think what
Hmm.
your question is beautifully oriented towards is how do we make this real in our lives? So let's do that. Um,
I'm ready. I'll go.
go ahead.
I first I love the start your day, start your day and whatever that last the last
Anti-anxiety
one.
way to start your day.
I try to do that on Mondays, and I
Hmm.
find that of all those tools that you mentioned, this is the one that really calms me the most because I do get in that
Same.
cycle of I've got 8 billion things to do. Oh wait, more than half of them are like 2-minute tasks or
Yeah,
things
that
that
too,
just don't
right?
even
Yeah.
matter. It's like,
Uh-huh.
oh,
Yeah.
Nico's birthday's until October. Who cares? Like, you
But your
know,
brain's like, you should worry about this now.
right,
Uh-huh.
right. So that's my favorite and my go-to, and I try to do that on Monday mornings. What I commit to trying is the tapping and meditation tapping because I've never tried it. And because I'm getting ready to pack and travel on Sunday afternoon, that I don't know why, but my anxiety is always heightened despite the number of checklists and things I already have. Like
Hmm.
and I'm not packing for kids. It doesn't matter who I'm packing for, but my brain just gets out of control because you have to settle the household too. So it's not like just the
Totally.
packing. So I'm going to commit to doing the tapping. I'm going to do it twice. I'll do it on Saturday and on Sunday, um, just to see if that will help um, decompress the
Awesome.
travel stress, packing stress.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you know what yours is, Casey?
Okay, so I was gonna look and see. I also agree the anti-anxiety way to start your day has been extremely impactful and meaningful for my life. So, highly, highly suggest that if you haven't done anything like that before. Will you scroll up one more time
Oh, yeah.
to the others?
To your menu,
Yeah,
we
to
got
my
the,
menu.
uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm kind of between the thought download and the tapping, but I haven't done much of the tapping like Shelly said, so actually I am going to commit to the tapping as well. And maybe Shelly and I can keep each other honest. I will do tapping twice before Sunday, and then Shelly and I can we can message each other, be like, "Did you do your tapping?" And make sure that we both
Also,
did
because
our
Casey is
tapping.
going to be messaging more, be going, okay, before you go away, did you do
Yeah.
this?
Right.
Oh. And did you do your tapping?
Yeah.
That's great.
Right.
And now that'll be
Awesome.
just one more thing added to my list of things to do, but it's a good one.
You can do
It's a
a
good
short
one.
one. You didn't say how long a tapping you had to do.
No, I didn't.
And Brandy, what about you? Do you want to declare anything or will you pass? Okay, she says a minute.
She might be caregiving right now too,
Yeah.
as we all are multitasking most of the time, aren't we?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, sorry. Grayson had a seizure, so
Oh,
Oh.
I'm sorry. I figured that's probably what you were doing.
yeah.
Oh,
Um,
Grayson.
probably um not that. I'm not good at writing stuff down. I've never have been. Like I make lists and stuff, but like my thoughts and stuff, I've never been good. But probably like the uh breathe work exercise
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that for you. Just starting with like,
would
yeah,
probably
even
be
just after the call, just
good.
taking a couple breaths. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, well, I have to wrap up for my next call, but I think what I'm gonna do is because I practiced obviously the thought download, excuse me, the anti-anxiety way to start to plan your day. But I feel like I kind of have a little, like I guess lazy is the right word. And so I feel like I want to kind of go back to the basics with it and like do it as it's designed versus how I've evolved to be doing it. I think that
Mm,
would be helpful for me to get really, really clear with myself during this next season. So that's what I'll do.
perfect.
Okay. Well, I hate to run, but I gotta run. And Casey, I will follow up with well, I did email you the tool, but I'll email you
Yes.
other links that I think would just be easy for people to have. So I'll get those so that they can
Wonderful.
be live with the video.
That
Alrighty?
sounds great. Thank you
Yeah.
everyone for taking the time out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Bye, y'all.
Great, thanks.
Bye.